give yourself the gift of feeling, what does it feel like when I don't drink? Just for a month. That, yeah, your wine cellar will still be there. Like everything will still be there. So if you clean up your diet, if you take on an exercise routine and whatever that looks like for you, I would recommend you do it with a friend, or you join a gym, or you do something in community so that you're not by yourself in your basement with your tomato cans thinking like, why am I doing this? This is boring. I don't like it. I hate it, whatever the case may be. And then the next thing will be sleep. And we know that our sleep is super challenged as we're moving through menopause.
All right. Well, it is such a pleasure to have my favorite guest on the show today, Nathalie Niddam, my biohacking bestie. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Zora. It is so exciting to be here. We just get to hang out for a whole hour and chat. Can you
I
imagine?
know, and more pre
And
and
more.
post.
I know. Sorry, hang on to your hats, people. There's going to be a lot of words exchanged here. We talk a lot.
We
Both
do,
of
but
us.
it's fun. You guys are a fly on the wall. You're just listening. It's just very intimate. You guys and Natalie and I. So what we're going to do, we decided we're going to talk about weight loss things, drugs, peptides, supplements, all these things, because we've just want to dive into that right now, especially probably with January coming to an end. Maybe some
Mm.
people need a little bit of a supercharge. We want to cover everything that we can that women are struggling with in this menopause transition when it comes to fat loss, weight loss, whatever you want to call it. What are our options? What are the trends out there? What's working? What doesn't? Etc. But before we dive into all the extras, what can we do now that's just basic? It's usually diet, exercise, but the things that we need to do in order to get a better body composition, because we are struggling building muscle. We are struggling
Mhm.
with our body composition during this time. So what do you tell your community and your clients when you're working with them?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think that now that we have the official silver bullet, the thing that almost across the board will move the needle for just about anyone, just about, it's very easy for people to say, well, I don't need to do anything else. I just need to do that. And we both know that's not actually exactly true. Not to mention the fact that there are people who don't want to, or it's not available to them for any number of reasons. And I would say that if not before, then at least concurrently, but all the rules remain the same. So the best way to have a better body composition, it's a little bit like the omega-3, omega-6 balance, right? People say, I need more omega-3. But what they forget is that they also need to lower their omega-6. And so people say, I want to lose weight. I want to get rid of fat. Then you need to increase your muscle. It's the first thing you need to think about because, in a way, even from a mindset perspective, you move into, instead of trying to lose something, which by the way is glued to your body, you're now looking to build something, right? It's almost like a better mindset. It's like a building mindset. It's more of an abundance mindset. And instead of saying, I can't eat this, and this, you move into, here's what I need to be eating. And so I'd say that in terms of food, if you're just starting and you're wherever you're at, you've picked up a bunch of bad habits, or you've just been trying to survive while your little kids were in school and you were juggling a job, or whatever the case may be, if you can even get to a whole food diet, so like a really easy, cheap program like the Whole 30, I think actually it might be free.
Mhm.
Right? So all we're doing is moving into a space where we get rid of temporarily, okay, we're going to get rid of dairy, we're going to get rid of grains, we're going to get rid of processed foods, that's not temporary. We're going to get rid of excess sugar, also not temporary. So we're going to get rid of the major bad actors. We're going to focus on vegetables that grow above ground, clean proteins, your meats and your fish and your chicken, like keeping it real. They do, I believe they do get rid of legumes, which down the road, you may choose to reintroduce. There's people's work that we'll point to that I know you're familiar with. But if you can just kind of clean that up, get rid of the wine for the love of all that is holy. Your liver is working so hard to process hormones, to clean up your environment. At least for this period of time, give yourself the gift of feeling, what does it feel like when I don't drink? Just just for a month. Your wine cellar will still be there. The liquor store will still like everything will still be there. So if you clean up your diet, if you take on an exercise routine, and whatever that looks like for you, I would recommend you do it with a friend, or you join a gym, or you do something in community so that you're not by yourself in your basement with your tomato cans thinking like, why am I doing this? This is boring. I don't like it. I hate it, whatever the case may be. And then the next thing will be sleep, right? And we know that our sleep is super challenged as we're moving through menopause. And I know you talk about this a lot. I'm going to stop talking in a minute because you haven't talked in too long, Dora. I'm just
No,
talking by myself.
these are the basics. This is what we need to hear. Absolutely. And I'm in total agreement with you so
Yeah,
far. Needs to be done.
100%. So speak to your doctor because you probably need progesterone. If nothing else, you probably need to balance. Again, it's about balancing the estrogen and the progesterone. Sometimes it's not that you have too much estrogen, it's that just that the delta between the estrogen and the progesterone has gone the wrong way. So we need to bring it up. So you want to find a physician that's going to work with you and rebalance these, help to bring some balance back to your hormones, which will automatically help you to sleep better.
Mhm.
One thing that I found was really helpful when I was having hot flashes and until the BHRT kind of kicked in and the whole 9 yards was acupuncture. So if you have access to a good traditional TCM doctor who does acupuncture, they've got some really cool tricks up their sleeve. I got to tell you. So we've got the exercise, we've got the sleep, we've got the nutrition, we've gotten rid of alcohol and a couple of the other bad actors, getting outside to manage your stress, going for a walk in the morning, going walk in the evenings, forget the sunglasses for a while unless you're driving into the sun. Like these are foundational basic things. And I would say that I'm not saying that just by doing this, you're going to get your perfect body, but you're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy and you might actually lose a few pounds,
Mhm.
right? And I would say that if you can start there and commit to this, start with 30 days, push it to 3 months, try to go 1 month at a time if you need to. Another really great strategy, I think, because we become more insulin resistant as we hit menopause. So automatically, so we need the weightlifting. We need a little bit of cardio. We need to challenge our bodies. But the other thing I think is really powerful, because I've kind of been getting into this a lot more lately, is fasting. So I've been fasting for years and years and years, but the Prolon 5-day fast mimicking diet, which I know you've studied at school, it's at 5 days. You get to eat some food. It's not a lot of food, but you eat some food. But they have shown that doing 3 months in a row of a 5-day, so 5 days a month fast mimicking diet, not only did people's insulin sensitivity improve, their blood pressure came down, they lost a few pounds, their inflammation came down, their aches and pains went away. And they did another study that showed that on average, people's biological age reversed by 2.5 years.
Yeah.
That's nutty,
Yeah.
right? And it's easy and it's cheap. I mean, it's kind of cheap. It's what is it, 175 or $200 for a week, depending
Mhm.
on whose code you use. I'm sure you have a code for Prolon. I have a code for Prolon, but it's easy. And if fasting is in your wheelhouse, then you could do a 5-day water fast. But the 5-day water fast, I would say, is like an advanced fast. It's not for everybody. It's not great for everyone necessarily. So it might be too much stress for your body. So I do find the FMD to be a really nice hack. But anyway, so if you took all these things and did them for 1 to 3 months and then reassess where you are on the other side, then you can start to think about, all right, well, what else can I do? Which I got to tell you, I'm not saying you shouldn't use a GLP-1 agonist. I'm not saying you shouldn't maybe think about trying some of the supplements we're going to talk about. But if somebody didn't want to do anything else and they said, look, I just want to do the lifestyle stuff to see what happens, then that would be a pretty good plan.
I think it's something that even if you are going to be taking any supplements, drugs, GLP-1s, you got to get the basics down anyways.
100%.
So that's why we want to lay this foundation, because you could get into this podcast wanting to skip all of this and let's just go to the biohacks. And that's why when talking about this, I love your mindset of building. I love that we're moving into getting stronger, building more muscle. What can we add into our diet? I think this is really, really key. I'm so fed up with people. I want to lose weight. I want to take out these foods, because that can be really distressful. And a lot of people maybe don't even want to go there or even try,
Mhm.
because all they think about is the scarcity mindset rather than the
Yeah.
abundance mindset that you say. And I just think I've seen it in my community work so much better. Putting on muscle, getting strong. Even I set goals for myself or for my community, is saying, look, we're not going to say, weigh ourselves and see how much weight we lost. We're going to see how much muscle we built, or let's see how much weight we can improve on. How much can we add when we
Mhm.
do a deadlift? And even if you haven't reached your whatever, if you have, I know some people are just still stuck on that weight number and a scale. Now you're able to lift heavier, lift more, and you see this, and within several weeks, like that's already a win. And that can be really encouraging. And knowing that you're getting stronger, and especially you in your podcast about longevity and aging, and as a gerontologist, we want to look after our future selves. So anyways, building muscle is something we need to do as we get older. So I want to just stress that mindset that you mentioned. And the other thing that I wanted to say, yeah, well, actually, you have a great podcast I just listened to all about fasting. And
Mm.
people who know me, they know I'm not a fan of fasting. I'm like, because usually the women in my community are already exercising, they're training hard. And I've just
They're
seen
doing
them like
too.
eat nothing, train too hard, and it's not moving. However, your podcast has really outlined it really well, that episode, in terms of who should fast, why fast, and all that. So there is a place to do it. I even, I do fast. I maybe do 24-hour fast or a couple of days once a year, because of the, I want the autophagy. I want to activate that.
Mhm.
But it's not something I would do regularly because I'm just too active. And but I did try the Prolon, 5-day Prolon as well. And Dr. Longo, you quoted it perfectly, because I remember in class, and he was one of my professors, he talked about these studies, and he is looking at a lot of people, it's who are sick, who have
Yeah.
diseases, who have cancer. It's not just about weight loss. I really like the Prolon for anyone who just either wants the autophagy, wants the longevity benefits, or they want to jumpstart a healthy diet and lifestyle. Sometimes people just need that they feel cleaner, they feel more ready to
Yeah.
tackle a change in their diet once they've done, say, some kind of a fast. So there is room for that in my mind. And so I think people should, I'll put the link into the episode about that fasting episode. So well done,
Thank you.
Nat.
Thanks. Yeah, well, coming from you, that I'm a big compliment. Thank you. And I think with Prolon, what's interesting to me is they've really, since they first came out with those kits, I think they've really improved them. All
Said
the
that because,
ingredients
yeah.
are the ingredients all organic. There's a mechanism by which they're sparing muscle. It's that
Yeah.
drink that you're
Mm-hmm.
drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I don't want to make this about Prolon, but I think that whether it's Prolon or some other fasting strategy, you could do a 24-hour fast once a week. I had a client who just built that into his world. And now he was a guy. So let's be clear, men respond differently than women, because right now your body is not actually working exactly for you. I mean, it is. Things are shifting. And in that transition, it's easier for us to put on weight. It's harder for us to sleep. It's harder for us to have energy to do the things we want to do. We start to crave the wrong foods. And maybe you came in already craving the wrong foods. The truth of the matter is, like someone like you, Zora, went into menopause carrying a beautiful amount of muscle, very little body fat, like with a healthy metabolism. I would say if anybody's listening to this and either has a daughter or themselves is like 25 or 30 years old, start working on your metabolism now. Start building those habits now. Because if you go into menopause in good shape, with great habits, you will be that woman that all the other women love to hate, who holds it together, stays in shape, doesn't get fat, doesn't, like it is amazing if you go in metabolically healthy, how much easier that transition can be, and how fewer of these side effects that people take as a given
Mm-hmm.
actually kick in. So if you're like, I'm telling you now, you may not believe me, but trust me,
Yeah, you've seen
do
it.
it. Start as early as possible.
Yeah, we've seen, we have plenty of cases of people who are a bit more athletic as they're younger. And if they can maintain that throughout their lives, they go into menopause or aging, they age much better with better muscle mass. Muscle has memory. So
Mhm.
even if you have periods of time where you cannot, like me, for example, it's been with hip osteoarthritis, can't be as active as I was, but I wanted to go into surgery still with muscle mass. Well,
Yeah,
I've lost some, but I know that the moment I get back, I'm just gonna get right into it. The muscle is
it'll come back.
it's not gonna take forever to get it back, but you've got to get this as early as you can. It's never too late. Always build, but like you said, and if you got a daughter or anybody you love in your family, get them to start lifting or get that muscle any way they can.
Well, and the lifting's really important because the bones, we talk about muscle all the time, but the bones are
Mhm.
super important and the bones are dependent on us building muscle. And the bones, you're building your bone bank account in your 20s and your 30s.
Mhm.
You're still in a building, well, obviously when you're a kid, but also in your 20s, also in your 30s, before perimenopause hits, you're still banking bone. And the more you've banked, the better protected you're going to be against some of the inevitable kind of loss that sort of happens. Now, we can fight that loss. We can use things like the power plate, we can use heavy weightlifting, we can use katsu bands, we can build muscle, like all of those strategies help us to hang on to our bone and keep it strong and flexible as we age. But again, if you've put money in the bank all this time and you've got a giant bank account, it's okay if you make some withdrawals. You'll be okay. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. You
Actually,
can
there's a
afford it.
very interesting study that I found, and it's been replicated a lot, where if you were for some reason injured like me or had
Hmm.
surgery or life happens, you suddenly have to take care of your aging parents, you can't get to the gym, you can't work out. They did seven, if exercising once a week was one group, exercising once every 2 weeks was another group, and then no exercisers. So that was the control group. And after 12, it was a 12-week study, they looked at aerobic capacity and muscle mass and strength. The people who exercised once a week retain significant amount of their muscle as well as their aerobic capacity, significant. And then the other group who trained once every 2 weeks, also significant, not as much as the one if you did it
No.
once a week,
Yeah.
but way more than the control group who lost a
Yeah.
lot. So if all you can do is once a week, my goodness, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Sometimes you're like, ah, can't do anything. But you get once a week, once every couple of weeks, you can maintain that so that when you're ready to jump in back into your active life, it won't be so painful and you'll
Yeah.
have much better outcomes. So yeah.
And I would also say with save up your money and buy something like katsu. Katsu's an investment.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. It's 100% an investment. It's not cheap. But for people who can't get to the gym, for people who are working out, it's a brilliant tool for all the reasons we know. But for people who can't really formally exercise, it is bomb. Like
Yeah.
it is, I don't think there's really anything quite like it that can make up for the fact to a point. It's not going to help with your aerobic capacity, but it's really going to help your body to build even when you're not able to get to the gym necessarily. So
Mhm.
again, like it's a hack. So as a hack, there's shortcomings, but it is able to check off some boxes that you wouldn't be able to check off otherwise.
Yeah, in case somebody doesn't know what katsu is, it's a type of blood flow restriction. It's partial occlusion, and it's these bands you put on your arms or your legs, and then it inflates, deflates. And so, what it does activates the growth hormone and helps us build muscle and retain muscle. And so, there's so much research on blood flow restriction in
Hmm.
general. You just go to PubMed and see thousands of studies on, and a lot of them are done on people who had surgeries, who are injured, who can't, and it's amazing. But we know
Yeah.
it works. Anybody who's been following me or not knows
Yeah.
that in our
And it's
community, they
and
love
I
it.
will, the only other thing I'll say about it is this technology is the OG technology, and this is variable blood flow restriction. So, as Zora described, this is pulsing. So, it's not the same as those tourniquets, which is
Mhm.
why you can use them while you're sitting at your desk or cooking a meal or doing whatever. Anyway,
Mhm.
let's move on from that because I know we've got a big other
Yes.
list of things to do. And
Well,
so where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the supplements or do you want to start with the GLP-1s?
I think we should start with supplements. And I think we've prefaced this a lot with building muscle, because building muscle also helps us burn fat. The more muscle we have, the faster the metabolism is running, the more we can eat. And I love to eat. So I prefer to eat than fast. I mean, so I'd rather
Same.
go and work on the muscle. So that's why we're going to jump into the GLP-1s or the weight loss peptides that would taken the world off by storm. Some people love them. Some people hate them. I know your take already on them because I follow everything you do, but others might not. So let us know what your thoughts are on some of these.
Yeah.
These are injectable peptides to lose
Yeah.
weight.
So I am a fan with a lot of caveats, right? I think that as much as that the GLP-1 category has been around for over a decade, which a lot of people don't realize, because there were before the semaglutide and the tirzepatide, there was liraglutide, there's lots of other utides and tutides and weptides, but we still, especially with the newer ones, so we've got semaglutide, which is a single incretin. It's the GLP-1 agonist specifically. Then we have tirzepatide, which is a dual incretin agonist. So now it's tapping into the GLP-1 pathway and the GLP pathway. So it's going at it from two different directions. And we have coming down the pipes retatrutide, which is a triple agonist because now it taps it. You've got GLP-1, GLP, and then a glucagon-like peptide. So you've got three different things going on. We don't have as much research, long-term research on these. So my approach on the GLP-1s, as much as I do like them and I use them myself, and I recommend them when it's appropriate, I will support people in using them properly, is to me, it is really important to use the minimum effective dose for you, which will be different from person to person. It'll depend on your metabolism and how much yo-yo dieting you've done in your life and a million other factors. And you want to use them with everything else that we've been talking about so that instead of being on a tricycle, you're on a two-wheeler with training wheels that are not on the ground. So if anybody's taught a small child how to ride a bike, we start with a tricycle. So they learn how to pedal, they get the mechanics going, they're safe. Now they grow up and they want a two-wheeler like their friends, but you put them on a two-wheeler right away. Most kids need a transition away from the tricycle. So we've got training wheels on the back of the bike. And eventually we alter the training wheels so they come off the ground. So now they're just catching them if they're going to wobble. And in very short order with little kids, they'll then learn how to ride the two-wheeler. For us, it's going to take a little longer. But to me, the GLP-1 needs to be used to varying degrees, depending on the person and their situation, with the two-wheeler, with those training wheels, not quite on the ground. And what I mean by that is what the training wheel's not quite on the ground is, it means you're exercising, you're focusing on your sleep, you're working on your diet, you're eating protein like it's a job, like you're doing all the things. You're eating a very nutrient dense diet. And that may mean because you don't have as much appetite, that may mean the green juices and the red juices or soups, like very things that every bite that goes into your mouth counts. So if we use them like that, if we use them at the lowest effective dose, again, this is so individual, right? So my lowest effective dose is the starting dose. Some people can do half or a quarter of a dose. Some people need a double or a triple dose. It just depends where you're at, but you want to work towards getting that down. And when you hit your goal, wean yourself off of it. Come off of it. Fly without a net for a little while. Lean into those habits even more. Keep doing the exercise, keep the diet clean, keep doing all those things, and see how far you get without it. Because I have a lot of people, and I myself will go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months. Don't touch the stuff. And then something happens. I hit a really big travel period. Like life happens, which it does. I start getting fluffy and I'll dip my toe back in the water and I may just use it for 2 or 3 months to get myself back on track. And then I step away again. And I think that in using it that way, you're kind of hedging your bets because it's not impossible. There was a study that just came out where they said that they did a mouse study where they showed that the cardiac muscle actually reduced, like they lost cardiac muscle. I will tell you that based on the science that I've read, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I don't know what dose they had the mice on. I don't know what they were feeding them, if they were feeding them regular mouse chow. I don't know if they had them running on their little treadmills every day. I don't know anything about the study. It literally just came out a couple of days ago, so I haven't had time to dig into it.
Well,
But
we
if
know they
there's
were
people,
mice, so
and they were mice, and I would say that we've seen no evidence, right? All the doctors you and I have interviewed, like they have nothing but good things to say about it. And I'll talk about why in a minute. But if there's even an outside chance that there could be downsides, why wouldn't we use this as a tool, not as a solution? Right?
absolutely. That's well said. To is a tool, not a solution. That's
No,
exactly the
exactly.
best way to describe it.
Hmm.
And I think what you said about using the minimal effective dose. So this is sort of GLP-1 microdosing.
No,
And
it's not.
no,
So wait, just to be clear, I'm not necessarily saying microdosing.
oh,
I'm saying
okay.
find the dose that gives you that starts to create movement for you, right?
Mm, mm,
Sorry to interrupt, but I think that like for a lot of people, when your metabolism's busted and you've been insulin resistant for decades and you've yo-yo dieted your whole life, like it's going to take some time and it
mm.
may take a higher dose to really get the needle moving for you. I get people coming, like I see people in my community, like they're a lot overweight. They're 50, 60, 70 pounds overweight. And now they have a doctor who's like, yeah, we're going to try a quarter of a dose. I'm like, why? Unless they have a health reason, why? Why? You need to throw this person a bone. Help them to feel the effects. Help them to feel what it's like to have less inflammation, to be carrying less weight around, to start to get your energy back so you want to go to the gym. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that the microdose thing is interesting, but that's like down the road when you're kind of at a maintenance dose. And if your doctor feels that it's helping your inflammation, then maybe that's a good solution for you. But if you need to move the needle, you need to be at a high
Mm.
enough dose to move the needle. So anyway, I
That makes
apologize.
sense. I don't know much about microdose. I'm just hearing about this for the first time. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, it's interesting. And the way I've heard it described is that probably, and I'm guessing maybe this is for the soccer moms or people who just want to lose 5 to 10 pounds or whatever
Yeah.
it is, the microdosing maintains your appetite. Because I think that's, or at least somewhat, maybe it controls it better rather than take it away all the time. Because I've said, as people I've seen been using this, they're not eating enough protein, they're not eating enough food. And when they do, it's usually not the right ones. And so I think, gosh, if it just takes away their appetite and then that's all they're counting on. And then once they go off and the appetite comes back, what have
Yeah.
they learned? So I thought the microdosing sounded like an interesting way to approach this so that you can still train to eat, but I don't have experience with that.
So let me speak to that a little bit because you bring up some really good points. So number one, let's talk a little bit about the mechanisms of action, like what's happening when you're using a GLP-1. All right. The one of the big differences between GLP-1s and a lot of supplements, for example, you mentioned one, pectin, and something else that it's a gelatin and it expands in your stomach so it fills you up so you don't feel hungry.
Yeah.
That's a one-trick monkey, right? And people will get tired of that pretty darn quickly. And it doesn't do anything to change any of the other metrics that need to be changed. It doesn't do anything to affect your resting metabolic rate. It doesn't do anything to affect your brain's drivers that says, I want a snack, I want a snack, I want a snack. What are we going to eat next? What are we going to eat this? When are we going to eat that? Oh, there's that bag of those chips downstairs. I really want those. Like that constant food noise that people refer to, right? It doesn't do anything about making you more insulin sensitive. If you're insulin resistant and your stomach is full, you're still insulin resistant. Maybe it'll make it easier for you to fast, but then you really have to you have to make sure that you're lifting weights, but now you're not eating anything.
Mhm.
So, one thing I want to say is with the GLP ones, there's a bit of a narrative out there that you have no appetite. That is true for some people, but it's not true long term for most people. And if it did completely kill your appetite, lower your dose.
Mhm.
Okay? Because you need to have some appetite. We see it sometimes at the beginning, and especially with semaglutide, like they can't eat a thing. And that number one, usually you need to titrate the dose down, and over time that will shift a little bit. What happens is where you want to get to is not that you have no appetite, but it's that you just don't care as much about food as you used to. You can
It's the
walk
food
by,
noise. The food noise is what you're
yeah,
saying, and
you
not
can,
the.
for me, if I'm at the right dose when at the times when I'm using it, if I walk by something that I normally would have just picked at, I'm kind of
Mhm,
like, eh, I don't need it. I don't want it.
mhm,
Because we don't realize if we have a bowl of almonds sitting out in our house, how every flippin' time we walk by the bowl of almonds, we grab a couple of almonds. And
mhm.
sometimes it's not almonds. Sometimes it's chocolate covered cherries or it's chocolate M&Ms or whatever. And you don't realize how often you go by that bowl and you need a little camera there counting all the cherries or the wine gums or whatever it is. And you will be shocked at the end of the day when you realize how it adds up. So, number one, shutting down the food noise. This is the reason why the GLP-1s are being studied to help people manage their addictions because
Mhm.
it's the same brain center. And it seems to have the same effect on people who drink too much alcohol, who are alcoholics, or people who are drug addicts, or people who are smokers. So maybe it can help with those. And I know they're being studied, but that is one of the mechanisms of action that virtually none of the weight loss supplements do as well, right?
Yeah, that's a surprising point. And I thought if there was a supplement or any kind that, or this other things that would remove the appetite or give you satiety, one or the other, then it would take away the food noise. But I'm wrong.
No, they're two different things. Like
Mhm,
because you're a person who doesn't experience food noise. You eat
mhm,
when you're hungry and you don't eat when you're not hungry. You've got
mhm,
that going on. A lot of people eat because it tastes good, because they feel like it, because it calms their nerves, because it makes them feel happy, because they're
emotion could be
like
trauma.
they're eating their
Yeah.
emotions. It could be hormone, it could be all the things. So what we're doing is when we talk about someone who has food noise, it's not someone who eats when they're hungry. If they only ate when they were hungry, 99% of the time they wouldn't be here in the first place,
Mhm,
right? So these are other drivers for eating food. So that's number one. So that is it hits the brain center there. It also helps to raise your resting metabolic rate. So your burn rate, the number of calories you burn at rest increases.
mhm,
So that's a really cool mechanism. Now, it's not a lot, but it is enough to make a mess of your HRV. It is enough to increase your heart rate, your resting heart rate. And so a lot of people will see this reflected in their wearables and they get all crazy. The good news is that usually after a couple of months, it settles down. Again, work with your physician if you have high blood pressure, if you've got any kind of cardiac issue. Although they are being used to help people with certain cardiac issues, you want to keep an eye on that. Okay,
mhm,
so always check in. So, resting metabolic rate. Next, let's go to satiety. It slows down gastric motility. It keeps your stomach fuller longer. So this is good news. So you get fuller faster and you stay fuller longer. That's the good news. The bad news is in some people, because so many of us don't make enough digestive enzymes to begin with, this means that the food sits there even longer, it ferments, and it can lead to heartburn.
mhm,
So, very often, a lot of practitioners will, frankly, people should have been doing this in the first place, but they will suggest that their clients or patients either have bitters before a meal or have apple cider vinegar before a meal to help to stimulate the digestive juices, or flat out use digestive enzymes with every meal.
mhm.
So, at least the food gets broken down and it's sitting there as it's waiting to pass. The second dark side of slowing down gastric motility is that it takes longer for the food to pass through the whole digestive tract. It's not contracting as well and as strong. And so, in that world, people who are prone to constipation, which is a lot of people, can get really constipated. And that is very much more a hallmark of semaglutide than it is tirzepatide.
Mhm.
So that's number three, right? Now, again, I'm actually supposed to, I'm having someone on the podcast who's a microbiome expert. And I think that he didn't give me any details, but I suspect that there could be a downside for the microbiome also. Because if you have
Mm.
food moving through more slowly, it could be a good thing, right? But it could be a bad thing. So I'm very curious to hear what this person has to say. But that being said, if you're prone to constipation, you're going to have to really keep an eye here. You're going to have to make sure you're getting fiber. You got to hydrate like nobody's business. Like you got to do all the figure out your strategy. Supplements like Tudka and ox bile can be really helpful here. There's many different ways to skin a cat when it comes to constipation. Figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, figure it out.
Yeah, so what you're basically saying is that all the drawbacks that people may point out with GLP-1s, you can offset it. There's ways to offset all these
Most of
things.
them for most people,
Yeah.
right? There's a couple that for some people, like for some people, GLP-1s are no go. Like it can cause pancreatitis in some people.
Mhm.
That's a hell no. That's your
But
body going, no,
I thought that was less so with tirzepatide.
less so, but it still can. It's a black box warning.
Yeah.
We need to go in with our eyes open. But now the most exciting piece, I've saved the best for last. The most exciting mechanism of action is that it improves people's insulin sensitivity. Right?
Mhm.
So that insulin resistance that's been like gum on your shoe that you can't shake, that no matter how much you exercise, like you just can't move the needle on it. And it gets worse because your hormones are shifting, because you're going into menopause. Nobody gets a memo. And all of a sudden you become insulin resistant. Maybe you weren't, or maybe you were just a little bit, or whatever the case may be. Now, all of a sudden, it's easier for your muscles to take the glucose because your pancreas gets better at secreting insulin, and the cells become more sensitive to the insulin so that the glucose can get into the cell. Well, if you
Mhm.
get glucose into the cell in your muscle, guess what? It's easier to exercise. So, this whole narrative of muscle loss and not exercising, people got to give their heads a shake. Now, if your GLP-1's making you super nauseous and exhausted, which again, we see a little bit with semaglutide sometimes, then you're on the wrong medication. Then you
Mhm.
need to move to tirzepatide, or maybe it's not for you. Whatever the case may be, it should not be making you tired. It should not be making you nauseous. If it is, your dose is too high or you're on the wrong medication.
Mhm.
Or it's not for you. It can be that it's just not for you.
What's the third one you said that's coming out? This is
Retatrutide.
retatrutide. And will that also, I guess it's going to be the new improved version, so perhaps
So we'll
it will.
see. I'm going to say like it's out on the in the gray market already. There's people are already getting their hands on it. And definitely in the studies, people lost more weight on
Mhm.
it over time. And they're talking to people who are clinically obese, because
Mhm.
that is the population that is targeted mostly for this. So I don't really know. I haven't seen, I still feel like I'm trying to think of what I've seen in the groups, and I would say that it hasn't overpowered tirzepatide to the same degree that tirzepatide overpowered semaglutide.
I see. Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen it yet. Or people feel that they stop getting effect from tirzepatide, so they now start to add in retatrutide, and I don't know that anybody's done a study combining the two. And you got people doing all kinds of stuff out there, right? So I'm a bit of a purist. I'm a little more cautious than some. So I'm less prone to doing that kind of stuff. But I would say that we'll see what happens, right? But right now, with what people have that's been out on the market for quite a long time, or for a good period of time, and that we know works, the mechanisms of action are all really, really, many of them, like the lion's share of them, are good. There's a lot of people that talk about how they're beneficial for the heart, they're beneficial for cardiovascular disease, they're beneficial for kidneys, they're beneficial for the brain. There's studies with people with neurodegenerative diseases, because if we can make them more insulin sensitive, it doesn't solve all their problems, but it solves that problem of
Mhm.
getting energy to the brain cells. There's an overwhelming list of positives, which doesn't take away the negatives and doesn't absolve you from really needing to do the work,
Yes.
right? If you
Yeah.
want to do it right, and if you want to come off this stuff, you don't want to be on this for the rest of your life. You shouldn't want to be on this. This is not, to me, this is not the final solution. You can't look at it
Mhm.
that way, because I don't know. Personally, I don't want to be dependent on anything. Like, I want to use this to help people to recalibrate their taste buds and rediscover what real food tastes like. I
Mhm.
want people to get to the point where they feel good enough that they can exercise. Or I had a woman who had really bad plantar fasciitis. Well, number one, the inflammation went down. it started to get better. But number two, she started to lose weight. That also helped her plantar fasciitis to get better. Like you start to get into these positive loops that just feed on themselves.
It's like you mentioned, a crutch or support or a supplement to doing the work, right? It can make doing the work easier. Plus, you have all these other benefits. So, unfortunately, I think too many people see it as just get straight to this and everything else will fall in place. But I like the fact that when you say that doing it the right way or doing it in tandem, taking these GLP-1s in tandem with cleaning up your diet and getting all the things that you know you should be doing. And because food noise is taken care of, insulin resistance is being worked on, like it's so much easier. It's
Mm-hmm.
easier to do that. And it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like when we say hormones. Before you take hormones, I also encourage women to do the same things that we just talked about. But how can you do that when you're feeling tired all the time because your sleep is poor,
Mm-hmm.
you have hot flashes? So doing all these stuff in tandem is really important. But one thing I never asked anyone yet about the GLP-1s is the emotional eaters or the people you have this food noise or you have a trauma and this is why you're stuffing your emotions with food. And imagine you're going on these GLP-1s, but then if you haven't taken care of the trauma or why you're eating emotionally in the first place, what happens when you go off of them?
It comes back. So this is where if you want to be, and it's funny, I just had a conversation about this yesterday with someone. You got to do the shadow work. You got to do the internal work, and nobody wants to do it. It's hard, right? You people have been through really difficult things, or maybe they had a difficult childhood, maybe something crazy happened. Who knows? As my husband likes to say, everybody's got their shit. And if those stories or those events or those traumas is what's really driving what's happening with you, imagine how much lighter you will feel. It will not be easy. It will be hard. But imagine how much lighter you can feel if you deprogram that story, if you can release that story. I could sit here and say, okay, I'm not going to think that anymore. My subconscious is like, dude, this is built in. This is not an option. This is what we learned how to do to keep you safe, and we know what's good for you. So it's going to take some work and it's going to take some help for most people to,
Mhm.
to release that. And so there's different strategies for different people. And I am in no way qualified or knowledgeable to even begin to advise people. You have to go see someone who does this kind of work with people.
Mhm.
But I can tell you that if you do the work, you're getting to the bottom of it, right? So now the GLP-1 becomes the tool that helps you to figure out the physical stuff. It quiets the noise while you're doing the work so you can get to that place. And then you come out bigger, better, faster, stronger,
Yeah.
right? Like you come out a better version of yourself for yourself.
Mm.
For emotional eating, for that whole segment of the market, I think that the GLP-1s do help when you're on them, but I think the minute you're off them, if you haven't dealt with whatever was driving it in the first place, it's coming roaring back.
Yeah.
So it
So
is,
yeah, it's again doing the work, mental, physical, spiritual, if you even want to go there, because
well, you
it's
do. You do. It is
it,
spiritual. It is that, and it's taking care of, this is where you're really turning in and taking care of yourself, right?
mhm.
This is where you're really loving on you, right?
Yeah.
Because the aesthetics more often than not is about optics. It's about how
Mhm.
we're seen in the world. It's about being accepted. Sure, it's about you, but it's also about the outside. But when
Yeah.
you're doing this internal work and dealing with your inside stuff, which is the hardest work to do, but it's also the most rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, there's a win for GLP-1s. But so now I'm thinking everything we discussed about in terms of emotional eating or food noise. My thought was, well, why don't we just skip the GLP-1s and go straight to focusing on building muscle? Because for all the benefits we talked about in the beginning with peptides like sermorelin or ipamorelin, CJC 1295, or maybe even a low dose steroid like nandrolone decant or naltrexone. There's so many things out there too. But I'm guessing now, after we spoke, maybe it doesn't have as many benefits as maybe a
It
GLP-1.
just depends. It really depends. And I think that for someone who's willing to really lean into the work and you're working with a physician, because once you get into the nandrolones and that stuff,
Mhm.
you want to be working with a physician who's keeping an eye on your hormones and making sure that everything is copacetic. and you're using the not the GLP-1s. Let's say you're using a CJC and ipamorelin, you're using a growth hormone secretagogue. In some people, more men than women, but definitely both in men and women, I've seen like this dialing in the diet, getting to the gym, using the growth hormone secretagogues work really well. It can work really well for people, but it just depends on the individual. And this is the thing. Maybe you shouldn't assume immediately that, oh, I need a GLP-1. Maybe you want to try a couple of other things first. Like we talked at the beginning of the podcast, maybe you just do a Whole30 and you commit to going to the gym like 3 or 4 days a week, let's say, and you commit to your sleep so that you're not scrolling on your phone till 1 o'clock in the morning every night. And we all know what to do, but we don't do it. So can you commit and start with a week? Can you commit to 1 week of doing this thing? 1 week of not drinking alcohol, 1 week of getting outside first thing in the morning and then at the end of the day, 1 week of walking for 20 minutes after your meals, whatever it is. And if you're not carrying around an extra 150 pounds and you're maybe 20 pounds from your target weight, by all means, like start there. Don't just jump to the GLP-1. Like you may not need it. Give your body the chance to show you how you can do this. But if you are carrying around like a bajillion extra pounds, I think for those people, with compassion, we say to them, let's help you out here. Let's help you to feel better faster so that you can experience what it's like to not be carrying around all that extra weight. And that is, frankly, all that adipose tissue is secreting inflammatory cytokines. It's making you feel crappy. You feel bad about yourself because you can't stop yourself or you can't stick to a program or whatever. Let's help you. Let's give you a tool. Let's give you a hand up and help you to come out of the cycle that you're in. It's like an empathy thing. It's a compassion thing. And then for the people who can't lose the 20 pounds, there's people who can do it just the way you're talking about. And there's a couple of supplement companies like Level Up Health has a supplement called Total Recomp. Healthgevity has one called Ignite Plus. Like these are really good formulas with dihydroberberine and DNF10 and then Healthgevity has another one with PeptiStrong. Like they have really good formulas. But for people whose metabolism is completely busted, it's going to take too long and it's going to require them to do too much of the heavy lifting for the most part. Right.
Yes.
So you got to look at the person or to think of yourself like, where am I? How did I get here? How much capacity do I have to do the heavy lifting right now? Could I use a hand?
Yeah. It
And if
makes
the answer
perfect
is
sense.
yes, then there's physicians that will, with their patients who are using GLP-1s, they'll have them using CJC and ipamorelin to help to build the muscle, right? In my mind, sometimes we have people that will use the pancreas bioregulator to help the pancreas, to help take care of the pancreas. We want to make sure it doesn't mean they're not going to get pancreatitis, but if they're somehow stressing the pancreas, then let's give the pancreas a little extra love. Part of that is also, by the way, letting go of the alcohol and the extra sugar, but I'm not to harp on that.
Well, we need to get help from any way we can. And so I think that's just the thing, is banging out all sides too, in some ways for some people. And I want to go into the supplements now because we have very little time now. And I wanted to cover kind of everything and how, say, GLP-1s versus supplements, because not everyone wants to inject themselves and or won't, and they are still looking for a solution. And so when we look at supplements, we're thinking maybe appetite suppressants or things that bring satiety. There's Garcinia cambogia, glucomannan. There's just tons of out there. What have you tried or seen in your community as working, and how do they compare to a GLP-1?
Yeah, so they don't compare. Like I'll put it out there, they don't compare. There's not one of those supplements that does all of the things that GLP-1 does. So that's number one. Number two, they take time. You're going to need at least a month before they even start to work for the most part. There's CaloCurb out there that, again, I think with the different supplements, different people are going to have different responses to them. And so for some people, it might be enough. Like we're going back to that conversation, right? For some people, the CaloCurb might be enough. The Total Recomp excuse me, from Level Up Health, it might just be the thing they need. Or Ignite Plus. Like I had a guy in my community, all he did was he started taking Ignite Plus every day. And after a
Mm.
month, he'd lost 10 pounds.
Wow.
So, number
Wow.
one, he's
Ignite.
the
What's
guy.
in there? What's in the Ignite Plus? What's the
Well, there's
ingredient?
dihydroberberine, there's DNF10, there's like all these, there's herbals and botanicals, there's things that help with blood sugar response, there's things that help with like the DNF10, I think it helps to increase metabolism a little bit. There's all the components are there,
Mhm.
but they're just not as powerful, right? So if what you need is just a little bit of support and your body's like, oh, we can do this. I got you. Then they're amazing. They can be amazing also for coming off the GLP-1s,
Mm. Oh, yeah. That's
right?
actually an interesting
You're coming
technique.
off the GLP-1, you're at your ideal body weight. You've been at this body weight now for a few months. So your hypothalamus, the set point starts to shift a little bit. So your
Mhm.
body's not fighting to get the weight back.
Mhm.
And now you bring these supplements, you start to wean off the GLP-1, you bring in the supplements, you maintain your healthy lifestyle and diet and all the things. And wow, you know what? You're like, look at me, ma. No hands, right? Like, woo, this feels really good, right? And then
Yeah.
Healthgevity has another one, another supplement I would say I would partner with either Ignite Plus or Total Recomp called Longevity. And
Oh,
longevity,
perfect name for you.
I know. Longevity has this. So there's a company called Neuritas, and they use AI to identify peptides in foods. And they identified a peptide in fava beans, of all places, that they've shown increases muscle. It
What?
stimulates
Oh,
building of
interesting.
muscle. I've been using the supplement for 3 or 4 months now, and I haven't been on GLP-1s for 3 or 4 months. I only started using it after the holidays because I had a really bad bout of travel and sick and food and all the things. But longevity, I know, helps me to maintain my muscle.
Hmm.
I take it every single day, along with all the other things that I do. But imagine if you've got your, let's say we're talking about longevity, you've got your Ignite Plus and you've got your longevity supplement, and you're doing them together.
Mhm.
And you've got something that's supporting the metabolism, it's supporting better blood sugar control, it's supporting a little bit of an increase in the resting metabolism, which you're not necessarily going to see in your HRV. It's not going to be that dramatic. And you're using the longevity and you're going to the gym and you're doing all the things. That might be just a little bit of oomph that you need to move the needle to get to that
Mhm.
place where you start to feel good. And oh, and the other thing I wanted to say earlier, we were talking about stepping on a scale. For the love of God, take out a tape measure. Look at your inches. Is your waist coming down? Because if the weight on the scale is not moving, but your waist is getting smaller, I got news for you. You are making kick-ass progress. You are getting exactly what you need done. You're getting rid of that belly fat that gives us so much trouble, like in terms metabolically and inflammation and cortisol and all the things, and you're putting on lean muscle.
Yeah.
That's a
Absolutely.
beautiful
Actually,
thing.
that reminds me of the photo I sent you. My only experience with those supplements as weight, like they call it weight loss supplements, but I was looking to change body composition. And in
Hmm.
90 days, and it had things like green tea, and there had some pepper, cayenne pepper, and all these sort of fat
Hmm.
burning stuff.
Yeah.
But it came with a diet and exercise. Like we had a group and a program. So it wasn't like you just take these. There was some protein shakes. And so, of course, we know all the things together, it worked. I didn't lose any weight, but my
Well, you
body
didn't need,
composition
yeah, but let's be clear, you didn't need to lose any weight.
I
But your
wasn't
body,
interested.
the
Yeah.
change in your body was spectacular. Like
Yeah, it
your
was
body
amazing.
shape changed completely. Yeah.
The point is to not look on a scale. I could have been a different shape or different weight, but the point is that muscle weighs more than fat. And so I
Yeah.
must have shifted. I know I had more fat and then I had less muscle and it just kind of shifted. And so then the body changes. And so what I encourage people to do is take a photo too, because
Yeah.
sometimes you forget. And if you don't put those
Always you
photos
forget.
side by side, then
Yeah.
you may not know. So actually, I want links to all of these healthgevity and all the other things that you just talked about, because I'm sure people want to try them. And I'll put those in the show notes. So don't forget to send me those. But
Okay.
I wanted to mention, just we're going to have to wrap up, but I wanted to talk a little bit about CaloCurb because that was my intention. I wanted to try this supplement, or not myself, but I wanted to get other people to try it, and I just didn't get my hands on it. I think you've had some experience with it, and because
Yeah.
on their website it's like a GLP-1 mimicker, and it sounds they make it
Yeah, it's
sound
not. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that they need to let that go. Or nature's GLP-1 or something. The only valid nature's GLP-1 that there is kind of a guy like Joel Green who's going to help you to rebuild your microbiome so that you're producing enough GLP-1. The thing with GLP-1 is when it's there for less than a minute, right? And in a properly working metabolism, that's all you need. The reason GLP-1 agonists work is because what the drug companies figured out how to do is make that GLP-1 last for 6 or 7 days.
Ah.
So it's in your body for 6 or 7 days. Plus, many of us have lost that microbiome. And so diversity. So we're not making GLP-1 properly. You can restore it. Excuse me. And if you're willing to do the work, I encourage you to go check out Joel Green's work. He's got a new book called The Way. He's hilarious. This is the way. No ego here. But the truth of the matter is, he's earned his stripes. The man has dug so deep on this. He knows his stuff. If you are a committed person and you're willing to really lean into what he's teaching, I think that is one of the few programs out there that really gets the job done for long term because it changes the way that you eat. It
Yeah.
brings diversity back into your diet. You'll be eating legumes, you'll be eating meat, you'll be eating fish, you'll be eating vegetables, you'll be eating fruit. Sometimes you'll even eat oats. Oh my God. Right? Like the horror.
Cheese sandwiches.
And a grilled cheese sandwich. Like you have to have a grilled cheese sandwich on Sunday. I'm like, really? Sign me up. Sign me up. It was when I did it, and I did his program for a year. It was amazing. As a matter of fact, I was doing his program the first time I ever used semaglutide, and
Oh,
I dropped 14 pounds,
wow. Oh,
right? And I
wow. Oh, wow.
only ever used the starting dose of semaglutide. But it was that program with the gym and the things that real and then I stopped and I didn't touch the stuff for over a year.
But you kept going with his
But I kept going with his
methodology.
thing. And it's when I fell off the wagon, the Joel wagon, that
Mhm.
things started to move back again. But I've maintained very effectively when I stay on and it's not that I stay on this program because it's like any other good diet. Sorry, when we're off the topic
Mhm.
of CaloCurb, but any good diet, if it's solid, if it's varied enough, if it's valid, if it's nutrient dense, all the things needs to become a lifestyle. Because for
Mhm.
as long as it's a diet, you're depriving yourself of something,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. The Joel Green. So anybody's going to go look this guy up. And I learned about him from you. And then I got my husband to do the diet. And in solidarity, I did it with him. And I think it's brilliant in the way that he's approached it. It was just so hard to interpret it. But maybe it's better to do
It's
one of
better
his
now.
online programs. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
Okay.
no. Well, when you did it, I don't think the way was out yet. So
No,
the
it wasn't
way
him.
has, yeah. So he heard the people.
It was so hard to
He heard the
understand.
people. His first book was brilliant. I think if I could find my book, it's got like 20,000 sticky notes in it. But he didn't write it for people to be able to see. Here's the thing about Joel. He's not a guy that values shortcuts.
Yeah.
He's a guy that believes, and he's not wrong, but unfortunately in our society, people don't go this way. You need to understand what you're doing. You need to know why you're doing this. He wants people to know that when you lose a bunch of fat, your immune system is going to be affected and not
Mhm.
always in the best way. Every
Mhm.
fat cell is anchored. Like fat doesn't just float around aimlessly.
Mhm.
Every fat cell is anchored. And so when a fat cell shrinks dramatically, it tears at those anchors. So your body has to repair the damage. And it
Mhm.
repairs it with a different type of collagen. Like it's he gets so deep into the intricacies of what is happening in your body. As a matter of fact, his first book is called The Immunity Code because
That's right.
he speaks to fat loss as an immune issue. And it's brilliant.
Mhm.
He ended up having to, and I wouldn't even say he dumbed it down in the way because there's still lots of QR codes with links to research,
Mhm.
but he did make it easier for people to follow. And he does have, and his programs are really affordable. Joel, you're welcome. This is your plug. But I
Yeah.
mean, I have so much respect for this man and for his work. It's really
Yeah.
amazing. And I honestly I really love Ignite. I love Total Recomp. I love longevity. But again, I think that if we could all get ourselves to a place where we find whether it's the Whole30 or Joel's program, where we're eating a diverse diet that really feeds the gut microbiome, that really addresses the body's nutritional needs, we will be in a much, much better place down the road. And frankly, probably won't need the GLP-1s.
Yeah. Yeah, it all comes together. I think it's whether, yeah, the GLP-1, I always look at like the biohacking pyramid, right? You got the foundation, and the GLP-1s is kind of up there in the top tier. You got to get the
Yeah.
foundation first. And then met plenty of women who got the diet, the sleep, the exercise. They're doing it all. They don't know what
And they're
else to do.
stuck.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
when you may want to bring this in.
Yeah.
And then
Or if you're morbidly obese, or
yes.
if you're just carrying around you whatever it is that happened that got you there, and you're in this place where you just can't see your way back. That's again for the GLP-1, that's a total use case scenario. Sorry, I
Let's go back
interrupted
to the
you.
calo curve because we
Oh,
mentioned,
do
yeah,
we have
it
to?
being a kind of, yeah, the kind of GLP-1 mimicker, which it isn't.
It probably, no, I'm not, I shouldn't say that because I haven't really dug into the research. I
Okay.
tried it for, I think I didn't give it a good shot.
Okay.
I didn't give it a fair shake. I'm not going to lie. So it's still sitting there staring at me on my shelf. So
My
I
bottle
still
got turned
plan.
away. Yeah, so I haven't been
Yeah.
able to get it.
So I'll tell you what, in solidarity with you, I will take it with me to Costa Rica, and that's all I will use.
Oh, good. Good. I want to
Maybe.
hear more feedback. I need to get
Maybe
my
when I
hand on
come back.
yeah, I need to get my hands on a few bottles. Or if anybody's listening now and you have taken it, please get in touch with me because I'm very
Mhm.
curious to see how that works, if it works. It sounds really good. I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of people that got behind it very heavily and sold a lot of it. I will tell you that I have not heard that from people who weren't promoting it. Like
Yeah.
I would have heard from someone in my community who would have stood up and said, "Oh my God, the people for who it worked really well were already very, very fit. They were already doing all the things. They were already working out." And what I heard was, "Oh my God, I take this and I can't eat, or appetite's gone, or whatever the case may be." If your only issue is overeating, probably it will help. But if you have this whole other constellation of things going on, probably you're going to need a little bit more. But again, to be fair, I haven't given it a really fair shake. And it's like we said earlier, for some people, that's they just need that one little push. They
Mhm.
don't need the giant hammer of a GLP-1. Maybe they just need that little that when Kello Curb says it's going to curb your calories. So obviously its main mechanism of action is going to be to suppress your appetite. I don't know if there's other stuff in there that increases your metabolic rate or whatever the case may be. But if there is, it's still going to be more subtle than the GLP-1.
Mhm.
But for some people, that's just going to be enough. That's all they're going to be, that's all they need.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do be open to the possibility, be open to trying different things, especially if you're within 10 to 20 pounds of your ideal body weight. Don't just jump to the most intrusive kind of heavy hitting intervention. Do something different, right?
Mhm.
Try different things. And then if nothing's really working and you really want to kind of move the needle and your inflammation's a little high, when you know that by losing that extra weight, you're going to feel better, not just look better, but you're going to feel better and you'll have less inflammation, whatever the case may be, then maybe that's the answer for you.
Yeah. There's so much out there. I'll have links to all of these in the show notes if I can. But two questions before we let you go. One, if somebody did want to get a hold of GLP-1s and wants to go through a program, I always recommend them to go to you. But if they were to buy them online, is there things that we should know? Because it can be sketchy. People don't want to be
It is
buying
sketchy.
this on Amazon, right?
The ideal scenario is you're buying it from a compounding farm. Well, the ideal scenario is your insurance is paying for it and you're getting it through your physician. That's utopia, right? The next ideal scenario is you're working with a physician, you're able to get it through a compounding pharmacy. And you can't do that with semaglutide anymore, but for now, I think you can still get tirzepatide that way. If you're going gray market or black market or whatever the case may be, you're now looking at the research labs. And the research labs is a really weird space because you've got everything in there from crooks to really responsible companies that are doing a great job that test all their products that are just completely above board. I'm not going to name them here. We talk about them you could find any number of communities online where people are talking about this stuff. So do your due diligence, do your homework, and for the love of God, do not shoot for the bottom. Don't go for the cheapest stuff that you find. Find stuff that is at a fair price, that is well vetted, that a lot of people have used, that people really trust and recommend, that have good customer service. Like it has to check all the boxes if you're going to go there.
You have a membership program, which I'm a part of, your community, the longevity community, which is awesome. I learned so much. I love everybody who's in there and your live Q&As and the guest experts you bring. And you've got a weight loss program going on there, which I didn't know too much about. What's that all about?
That program was designed really to support people who are using GLP-1s. So that's the idea. People in the community have access to joining that program, which is an additional fee because it involves extra coaching and the whole nine yards. And then the membership community, yeah, there's me and there's the experts, but it's also a community that includes a lot. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of practitioners in there. There's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff. So it's pretty cool for me. I learned a ton by reading the posts and other people's responses and stuff. So I think it's a really neat collection of people where right now it's at the time of recording this podcast, the community's closed because we're undergoing some renovations. We may be moving, like we've got a lot going on, but we're expecting it to be reopened by the beginning of February. So at that time, if anybody's interested, you can go to natniddam.com. That's my website, and the information will be there. The best thing to do is to sign up for the newsletter because I'll definitely be putting out a newsletter when we reopen. And also, or follow me on Instagram at Nathalie Niddam because I'll announce it there as well.
Awesome. All right. I'm signed up to all of those already. And that's where I learned so much too. Thank you very much. I'm going to have to let you go, Nat. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. And I always learn so much. You're just on the cutting edge of everything. You're so advanced. And I encourage everybody to keep following you. I'll have links to everything that we spoke about in the show notes, as well as how to contact you and email you. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to share before we let you go?
No, I think we're good. I learn a ton from you. I think we're fortunate to be in a community where we learn from each other. Like we can't know all the things all the time. So it's all about helping each other to stay abreast of the different areas that we gravitate to and where our expertise lies. So thank you for all that you do, Zora, and thank you for having me. It's been a joy as always.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who's been listening to the end. I hope you have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you're at, and we'll see you next time. Take care.